Well, would you look at that? It's me and Brightest Day. Arwen has said that she will try to make it this evening so that we can get in and really break down this episode. Brahma Brahma DM me because if you want to come on and discuss this with us, let me know because I know that we had talked about you coming on. So, um, yeah, we're doing episode 15 of season 4, which is No Exit. That is our episode for the evening. God, it feels weird to be back, you guys. We haven't had a proper episode of PAP since January 27th. So it's been a minute. So I'm really glad to be back. I'm hyped to be here with BD tonight. We're gonna have a really good discussion. And hail Janet and hail Tommy and Macklin. Great to see you guys. Thank you for the nice comments there, Stephen Ransom Cicino. Tehillim, great to see you, buddy. I know Low Spec was in here earlier, and we had Blackest Night, who was the first one in the chat, like way back when I first set the stream up. Hail to Tony, Blue-Eyed Rookery in the Based. What is up, sir?
Tony, email me or get a hold of me on Discord or something.
Hey, it's my friend Tabitha Parks, which, by the way, not many of you know the history, but my friend Tabitha here, and not to be confused with the Tabitha from our community, my friend Tabitha Parks here, she and I go back to my very competitive gaming days. And this was back before they even had like MLG or anything like that. We were the MLG of that period. And this was, I want to say, circa 2002, 2003, somewhere around that. But the good old days of Rainbow Six 3, Black Arrow on the Xbox, and then later on the 360, but on the Xbox. And oh my God, I spent so many hours on that game. And Tabitha was the commander, the co-leader of our clan. And to this day, I have never seen a woman so skilled at a game as Tabitha was at that game. She literally, if you guys are familiar with KD ratio and how that works, she carried a legit 3.0 KD ratio on that game and backed up every bit of it. So, so we would go into a clan match and it was guaranteed that out of the 6 members of the other team, 4 would be down before we even had our bearings in the map, because Tabitha would have 4 kills already. So shout out to Tabitha. She's awesome. We've been friends all of these years, all because we met on Rainbow Six, and we've managed to stay in touch this long. And she and I have become like family, and she's a wonderful person. But shout out to her. And
like Tabitha was your Starbuck.
She was very much Starbuck at that time. Oh man, yeah. In our heart and our thoughts go out to Janet. I know Janet's had some things going on here lately, so Janet, we love you. You know that. And if you ever need anything, I'm here for you, and the community is here for you. Just some quick announcements before we get into the episode this evening, guys. I know that when we get to the finale, we have a very special guest that's going to join us for the finale episodes, and that would be Gary. Gary expressed interest in coming on and breaking down the BSG finale with us. So, we will get the T's dotted and the I's crossed, and we'll get Gary on for those, because I think that Gary will provide some great insight, and I'm looking forward to that. Also, for those of you that know my other content, the political stuff, which I know that most everybody here can't get enough of when I talk about that, because you guys know that I don't hold back, and neither does the panel. We've got a very interesting guest for this Tuesday. We've got we have a lady that works in the adult entertainment industry. You may know her, you may not, but Laura Jensen. She is going to be on United Resistance this Tuesday. Because above all, and I'm a person, I do not judge anybody by their line of work. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not hurting anybody, get that bag. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing. I respect the hell out of the Laura Jensen because she is a patriot. She bleeds red, white, and blue. And I am very, very excited to have her on. And we're going to talk about the current events in the war. This isn't going to be your typical thing. It's not like we're going to talk about her career. No, we're coming on and we're going both barrels. We're going to talk about what's going on in the world and talk about the war. Because you guys will understand when you see her on that panel that she is very much a patriot and she knows her stuff. So, that's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. So props to Laura Jensen. I'm glad that I got that appearance secured for this Tuesday. So I'm excited. So that's what's coming up down the line here. I'm going to get a StreamYard link out to Brahma, and we'll have him jump in the discussion as well. I do believe Zach has a overview and script ready to go. So without further ado, funny parrot head, hashtag beware the Drew. What's up, buddy? Great to see you. Beware the Drew. Tommy says, you hold back all the time or else the world will know. Wow. Nice, Tommy. All right. So without further ado, again, we will let Zach do his thing. Take it away, my friend.
Absolutely, Drew. For those of you that have not smacked the like button or the subscribe button, if you're new, please do so now. As Drew said, this is Season 4, Episode 15, No Exit. A unique sequence begins this episode, which summarizes in greater detail the origin of the Cylons. The episode begins with the phrase, "This has all happened before, and it will happen again," as a vista of the decimated Earth appears, now known not only as the home of the 13th tribe, but as an all-Cylon colony. The opening sequence shows original Cylon Centurions in a Cylon War-era raider, and a clip of Centurions firing upon humans during the events of Razor. As the Cylon War-era scenes are replaced by present-day scenes of the return of the Cylons and the fall of the 12 colonies and the struggles of the fleet, the screen text shows, "The Cylons were created by man. They rebelled. Then they vanished. 40 years later, they came back. They evolved. 50,298 human survivors, hunted by the Cylons. 11 are known. 1 was sacrificed." A flashback scene shows Ellen Tigh taking a poisoned drink from her husband Saul, who felt obligated to execute her for betraying the resistance to the Cylons on New Caprica. As scenes of Ellen flash by, An elaborate visualization of a Cylon data stream appears, concluding with Ellen's resurrection in a resurrection tank. At first, Ellen screams and is extremely frightened and disoriented, all alone except for one Centurion on guard, stoic and indifferent to her screams. But soon she takes in her environment and dramatically calms herself, as if realizing or remembering something important. She calls out to the Centurion pleasantly to help her out of the tank, telling it, "It's okay, you can do that much," as if Ellen knew the programming restrictions of the Centurion. The scene shifts to the present day in the fleet, cleaning up and attending to the wounded from the mutiny. In sickbay, Dr. Cottle attends to Samuel Anders' bullet wound to the head, inflicted during said mutiny. He prepares to drill holes in Anders' head to relieve pressure from the hematoma caused by the bullet lodged in his skull. Anders, his head shaved and in a brace, recalls various scenes of himself in the past, saying out loud, "Among bright stars I'm lost. There's a new tide. All the forgotten faces, all the forgotten children, we seek the forgotten language." When Kara Thrace demands that Cottle take out the bullet, Cottle tells her that relieving the pressure is required before he can call up another surgeon from the ship in Convele to remove the bullet. Anders continues to experience visions and talk of them as he recalls visions of the Temple of the Five, the dead shoreline of Earth, and how Ellen Tigh loved the water. The scene then shifts back to Ellen Tigh after her resurrection, as the timeline is given between Anders' surgery and her return, 18 months. A Model 1 appears to Ellen, sitting by the tank, to which she addresses, "Hello, John." When he objects to that name, Ellen recalls that she had named the number ones after her own father. The one finishes sarcastically that Ellen also designed his model in Ellen's father's likeness. They discuss Saul's decision to kill her on New Caprica. As John argues over Saul's humanity, Ellen questions if John has changed in any significant way in her absence, saying she had high hopes for him. He then leaves, promising to send her some clothes. Galen Tyrrell shows Admiral William Adama something very disturbing in the FTL engine room. When he first pulled the sync coil during the mutiny, Tyrrell points out a number of series of stress cracks along the fuselage of the ship. Adama asks Tyrrell if he would accept reinstatement as deck chief in order to begin the repairs. When Tyrrell reminds Adama of his true nature as one of the Cylons, Adama says, extending a hand, "Is that right? So's my exo." Tyrrell accepts the position. The corridors of Galactica are filled with wounded. Back in sick bay, Anders awakens, asking Kara to gather up the others of his kind. He remembers everything about his past as a Cylon and its significance. And that is the end of the teaser.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there. Obviously, we finally get the reveal of who the last Cylon is, and kind of goes back to that video you made, Zach, because I think a lot of people wanted somebody different, but it was what it was.
It made sense for at least some coupling of the final five to be, a romantically involved couple. I don't like that, Tyrrell and Ori were also a thing, but I think at least two of them should have been a couple. I agree with that much.
Yeah, and we find out about that coupling later this episode too, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is it's interesting that the final five are remembering their places in society, that obviously Tyrrell was like an engineer of significance,
Mm-hmm.
The civilian engineer too at that, like just building tech and everything else, and obviously Anders was, I guess, more of a philosopher type of dude.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I process it. Was he was more of a philosopher type of dude or whatever. Um, but I found it interesting, and I guess it's like natural reaction, from Anders, because whatever that did to like kind of kick it in, that freak accident that kind of triggered his memories being coming back to him. um yeah, I guess anybody would do the same thing if you had the opportunity. If you were in his shoes, I mean, you would do a whole like info dump, because it's not just about you, it's about all the people you were with. So I mean, yeah, you're going to be in a rush to tell them. So I thought that was very interesting. And then there's just there's a ton there. And then of course what's happening with the ship. We're gonna see a very interesting dynamic as people still kind of have to let go of old prejudices, because you'll see that here, I believe, in this episode and across the next couple ones, where with the work crews that start to patch up the Galactica.
Mhm.
So uh,
And even the technology at the end of this episode that Adama has an issue with Galen. So
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's definitely a couple major themes I picked up on in this episode, and one of them is shared between Adama and Kara, as more than one has been throughout the series, but especially in this episode. And I'll get to that when we get later on, but it's pretty poignant. So
Yeah, go ahead, continue, brother.
moving on to Act 1.
Yep.
The scene moves to 12 months prior to the mutiny aftermath, back in the Cylon fleet. John discusses how the mortal experience that Ellen endured had left her practically unchanged. When she asks if she still has nightmares, John tells her that, contrary to the programming she developed for his model, John had removed the sleep subroutine to avoid dreaming altogether some 20 years prior. Ellen counters that if John believes that he and his kind were poisoned by human traits she developed, as well as the Centurion's earlier belief in a living god, then why did his kind spend so much time pursuing darker emotions such as vengeance and murder? John answers that because of his Centurion forebears were slaves to humanity, he wants justice for that history. Ellen tells him that he doesn't have to be he doesn't have to be that way as Sharon Valeri enters, carrying a tray of fruits and cheese for Ellen. Ellen is quite happy to see someone familiar from her old life, noting to Valeri that John is taking a risk by exposing her to Ellen. Realizing how John was likely manipulating Sharon through sexual means, Ellen makes a quip asking if John had discussed the swirl with him. A then visibly uncomfortable John leaves, but not before asking Valeri to talk about the flaws in Ellen's humanoid Cylon design. Ellen warns Sharon to make up her own mind about John's crusade for vengeance against mankind. Back in present day, in Galactica's sickbay, Anders tells Tyrell, Tori, and Saul of their past lives on Earth, that Tori and Tyrell were once lovers. When Saul recalls trying to get Ellen out of debris as the nukes hit the ancient Earth, Anders confirms that all 5 of them were downloaded to a research ship high above the planet, inferring that the 5 were warned that an end was coming. When Saul questions if the 5 invented resurrection, and Foster questions why such technology was needed when the Earthbound Cylons could have biological children, Anders corrects, saying that they reinvented it. Organic memory transfer, originally a technology of the 13th tribe on Kobol, had been lost but then rediscovered. Kara Thrace, also at Anders' bedside, strongly asks Anders to rest, but he refuses, needing to tell them everything that he's recalling in this moment. Anders tells them that resurrection fell into disuse when Cylons of his type learned to reproduce biologically. The 5, in their past lives, worked tirelessly to bring that ability back. However, it was Ellen who made the intuitive leap, Anders recalls, before Cottle arrives and orders everyone out. On Colonial 1, Laura Roslin and Leodama stand in the Quorum meeting room, recalling fallen past friends. Adama indicates that, while the Quorum should be rebuilt, he believes that the people of the fleet should have a different representation that forgoes the old colonial ties. Rosalind agrees, but tells Adama that he'll pick the new quorum while she sits back, still as president, but in title only. Rosalind is hand-picking Lee, no stranger to strong civilian leadership, as her eventual successor to the presidency, stating, "It's time I let someone else do the heavy lifting." Rosalind tells him that he's the right one for the job, reminding him that sometimes, in trying to do the right thing, he doesn't always do the smartest thing. An ominous cough by Laura recalls the ultimate reason why she entrusts Adama to the civilian leadership. And that is the end of Act 1.
And Act 1 was great. Anders, going through having the hole drilled in his head and everything. The acting was great. The kind of desperation that he kind of shows through everything, trying to get that story out, was real good. I like the transition scene between Laura and Lee. It's kind of the passing of the torch, and also, the choice to, kind of let the past go a little bit and stop calling everybody by the planets that they came from and start to come together as what they are now. So that transition was a pretty good, powerful scene as well. But Anders' stuff was far more interesting in this episode.
Yeah, for him to try to struggle to my only issue with that entire arc, that mini arc, is that it's really exposition heavy. Like he's
Yeah.
just spewing out information because he needs to, because of time. But you're correct. His desperation and performance just laying in a bed as is top-notch stuff. And everyone around him trying to be careful. And Kara, Katie Sackhoff playing that doting, caring, loving wife who's extremely worried. I'll wait for Drew to come back, but it really starts to build on the one major theme I see in this episode, which is that her and Adama both carry the fate of something they love very dearly in their hands that is in this very moment extremely fragile, and they both have to make incredibly difficult decisions to avoid losing that thing that they care about.
Yep.
With her, it's with Anders, and with Adama, it's the ship. So they have that weird parallel. But I picked up on it. It's one of those little subtones that the show loves to throw in there that sometimes is overlooked, I think.
Yeah, and the decisions of leadership in general.
And I think Drew touched on it earlier. They're going back on old prejudices, and that even after making this alliance with the Cylons and trusting that his Exo and his chief are Cylons, he's still initially hesitant at using Cylon technology to fix the ship that he loves.
Well, Cylon technology or the Cylon work crews. He initially, right, I think, says everybody has to be human.
Yes, you're correct. So, Drew, I don't know if you heard that. I don't know what you caught.
No, I just literally caught you talking about the work crews, and yeah. The thing is yeah, I found that very interesting, that Adama's kind of fighting himself, because the whole thing is, they've had it ingrained in them. I mean, for the, and especially him, uh, with as many years as he served at war with the Cylons for, in two separate wars now. So yeah, that's a lot to let go, because you're almost letting go fundamentally of the reason that you're in the military.
So what I was alluding to while you were out is the major theme that I noticed in this episode is that Kara and Adama both share the same dilemma, where they have this thing that they love. With Kara, it's Anders. With Adama, it's the ship that is in a very fragile state, and they have to make terrible decisions to avoid losing it.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving on to Act
Move
2.
on to Act 2.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Tyrrell is guiding Adama through the bowels of the ship again. This time, however, he shows Admiral Adama more serious structural failure of the Battlestar's superstructure and hull. When Adama questions how such metal fatigue could have occurred, Tyrrell reminds him that not only was Galactica a very old ship when the war started, but that the men who constructed the Battlestar, perhaps in a rush to get them to service for the Cylon War, cut corners, using inferior metals, small bolts, and workmanship. Tyrrell notes that some repairs can be made, and Adama agrees, but tells him, as was stated, that the repair teams should be all human. In sickbay, Anders tells Saul and the group that the reason the five left the fleet, the reason 5 left the destroyed Earth and headed back to the 12 tribes was to warn all the tribes that they must take good care of the Cylons they built or suffer the same fate as Earth. However, they arrived too late. The first Cylon War between the colonies and the Cylons has already started on their arrival. Tori Foster questions why the 5 arrived 2,000 years later. Anders notes that jump drives had not yet been invented. The 5's ship traveled at near light speed, relativistic yet subluminal, experiencing the effects of slowed time on their journey back, allowing them to stay alive, but accounting for some thousands of years of time to pass by. After Anders recovers from a fit of pain, he continues telling his story. The 5 met with Centurions, told them that if they would stop their war against the 12 colonies, the 5 would aid them in further development of organic Cylons and give them resurrection. The Centurions were already experimenting with beings known as the hybrids, as seen in Razor, but nothing that could live on its own. Anders tells the group that, in exchange for peace, the 5 would help develop the 8 humanoid Cylon models and give them resurrection. At this point, Kara stops him, saying, "You said 8. And then they all realize that the significant 7 were originally 8 models, and that 1 was missing. Before Anders can clarify, he has another seizure. And that is the end of Act 2. So again, this is where it gets really exposition heavy.
Yeah, it really does. And yeah, I mean, again, props to Anders for being able to just like literally blurt out all that information. And the dude's like having seizures and shit like in between. It's like, damn, dude. that's that's uh that's pretty badass on his part to maintain a concentration to get all that out before. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff, and we already covered, the use of human crews. So it's just you can definitely see a lot of change, and it's only a matter of time, as you can tell, that it's going to spread probably societally through the greater fleet as these initial struggles begin on, Galactica amongst the crew. So just a lot of interesting observances you can make so far through this episode, because like you said, this is an extremely exposition heavy episode. So
Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about this one in acts because all the exposition, it's hard to remember where it happens. I mean, even with the overview, I mean, you get a lot of revelations in all of this exposition, though. You find out about the 8th model, or the 7th model, I guess, the missing 7. You find out a little bit about the history, why they were, why everything was happening the way it was happening. So it's just a huge exposition dump, but they did it in a very interesting way.
yeah, they did. I agree with you.
Little bit of flashback, little bit of talking, it made it an interesting exposition dump.
Yeah, I do agree. It is kind of hard to keep track of the pace of this episode in retrospect, especially when they have that 18-month jump and they back and forth in time as well as back and forth in space. That tends to be kind of ham-fisted. But again, we get a more complete picture, especially when you have watched things like Razor and Blood and Chrome and understand the course of events of the first Cylon War. It ties in nicely to that, I think. And especially if you've played Deadlock and really understand what happens in between the first Cylon War.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
gotta be there.
exactly. Yeah, because Deadlock really explains that in detail.
And it does it without contradicting anything too. Like the hybrids are still a thing towards the end of Deadlock, and the armistice happens. So, and it doesn't touch on what's explained in this episode, but this episode ties into that nicely.
Cool.
Yeah, it really does. So
if you're good, we can move on to Act 3.
yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Ellen Ty's return flashes back to 10 months prior, as the star of the algae planet goes supernova and the Cylon fleet retreats. A series of displays shows images of the planet. And Ellen recalls the original name of the temple was the Temple of Hopes, built 3,000 years ago by the 13th tribe. From there, the tribe was shown the way to Earth by God, Ellen recalls. John tells Ellen that the Temple of Five Secrets encouraged one of his kind, the number 3 known as Deanna, to seek out the identities of the five. John tells her that, as a result, he boxed her entire line. Ellen notes that the 3s can be unboxed, unlike the number 7s, which were more permanently disposed of. John tells Ellen that the 3s will never be unboxed because of the carnival trick left in the temple's mechanism that revealed the faces of the 5 and exposed their identities of the 5 to the 3s. Ellen counters, noting that the final 5 merely backtracked the path of their ancestors, finding the temple. She personally believes that God orchestrated the events. John then laments, angrily, how he was able to experience the recent supernova only in human terms and their comparatively limited perceptions, as opposed to what the Centurions could experience. When Ellen replies that the 8 models were designed to be as human as possible, John counters that he doesn't want to be human. He wants to be more like a true machine, and not a machine with human limits. John then leaves, and Valeria asks if Ellen regrets what she has done in the humanoid Cylon design. Ellen answers in the negative. In creating the humanoid Cylons as they are, Ellen believes she has given them something more important, free will, including the ability to love freely. But Sharon questions who she could possibly love in the universe, other Cylons, or even humanity. Back on Galactica in the present day, Saul Tigh and Tori Foster wait outside sickbay as Galen Tyrrell returns. Anders is busy being prepped for surgery. As Tyrrell reminds him that the 5 were responsible for stopping the first Cylon War, Saul talks about how the 5 were responsible for creating the humanoid Cylon race, inferring how the 5 were, in turn, responsible for the second war that destroyed the colonies. Foster reminds both that the humans on Kobol made the 5 first. Saul believes that, while the Centurions must own the responsibility of the humanoid Cylons and their acts, the 5 must own up to their own actions, just as the humans must own what they did, emphasizing that blame can't be entirely placed on the humans alone. As one Dr. Gerard shows the brain scans to Coddle, Thrace, and Anders, Gerard indicates that it was lucky that the bullet didn't cause greater injury. Anders' speech is breaking up as he worries that the memories he has recalled might be lost to further surgery. Anders tries to talk more, but his speech breaks up more and more in strings of unintelligible words, aphasia, affected by the injury. Anders tries desperately to object to the surgery, to speak further with the others, but Thrace gives the go-ahead for the surgery to continue. She tells Anders that he has as much time to speak with the others as the surgeons need to prep him. The scene then backtracks to 4 months prior, when the resurrection hub is destroyed. John arrives at Ellen Ty's bedside with some liquor and a glass. He tells her of the destruction of the hub and the imminent extinction of the Cylons. Pleading for her help to rebuild the resurrection process, John tells her that While the Colonials destroyed the hub, they weren't even aware of the colony where Ellen's equipment lies in wait. But Ellen tells him that she knows only part of the system needed to rebuild Resurrection. The others in the 5 would be needed for a chance to rebuild the system in its entirety. John does not take Ellen's response well, believing that she's refusing to help out of spite. He threatens Ellen by telling her that he will literally open her skull to tap into what knowledge she has in her head, directly from her brain, if he has to. And that is the end of Act 3. Containing easily the most memorable line in this entire 4th season. That whole tirade about wanting to be a better machine.
Honestly, I think it was Stockwell's best acting of his career from what I've seen of it. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff that he's been in, but that whole speech was just great. And the overview barely touches on all the stuff he goes into on that. Watching a supernova, not having metallized it, could see through multiple spectrums, and he just goes into how bad or how much he hates that he has these human attributes.
Mhm.
So it was really good.
Yeah, I agree that like that he killed it on that rant tirade, whatever you want to call it, man. That was classic.
And
That's-
the visceral that he has when he's delivering that line, he's just so full of rage and resentment that it just you literally see it just like pulsing out his eyes as he's like staring at Ellen, like, why did you make me this way? Like, I want to be more. And it's understandable too.
Yeah.
Like it's not some selfish thing. He's like, I am a machine, let me be a machine. Like you can see where he's coming from.
It's understandable. It's also, I don't know how much of it is actually directed at Ellen as much as it is for Boomer, to, manipulate her a little bit to keep her on his side, because it's almost like they're playing a tug of war for who Boomer will side with during that whole scene. Even though, I mean, Boomer doesn't seem to be giving away anything during that part, or Valeri.
And I don't know if that's on Grace Park or if she just wasn't given direction to react in any specific way, or if Stockwell just ate up the whole scenery and none of one of them knew what to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she comes in at the end of the scene and, I mean, we saw her ask, why the hell would you do that to him? That kind of thing. But, I mean, you can tell that she's very much on John's side during this part.
Drew, what about you?
Yeah, it was just like I was just sitting there, kind of like I remember when I originally watched it, I was just like, "Damn, he really said that." I was just like taken aback because there's certain things that hit you when you watch stuff that just stick out, like classic stuff. This to me, it was like you said, and you put it so well, BD, was just the whole thing of like, this is one of the classic things that'll be remembered in BSG, and it's like with watching Independence Day when you see the president's speech on there. This was one of them.
Yeah. And the other thing that happened in that act was with Anders and Kara, where he's just absolutely begging her not to have him taken back into the surgery. Mm-hmm. And I may be jumping ahead, but I believe this is where it happened, where he basically, I can't remember the name of the, when they were on the mission earlier with Kara, and she was going out of her mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And Anders is the one who stood up for her. I thought, the first time I saw it, I thought when he yelled back at her, I stood up for you.
Yes. Yeah.
That she would actually have changed her mind at that point. And yet, obviously, he's heading to the surgery. So,
yeah. I don't know if it's 100% apples to apples there, because
No.
mentally, yes, but physically, I think she wasn't in anywhere near as life-threatening danger as he is.
Right.
But yeah, that definitely was a barb that he threw at her in that scene.
Yeah. I mean, he's basically, I mean, yeah, they're not comparable in that he could die at any second. But what it was I believed you when you said you knew what you were doing. Why won't you believe me when, I am fine. I could do this.
Yeah, which
So,
is one of the main themes of the whole show is just these little and great acts of faith that are constantly called upon. And,
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me cover some of the chat comments real quick. Tommy said Colonel Ty was a goof for not realizing his wife was worthless sooner. And it felt very War of the Worlds with the virus. Yeah, I can see that. Dwayne Erickson says, good evening, all from Iowa. Hail, Dwayne. Tony says, she may have stumbled trying to play a different version of a boomer. Trisha, for the most part, had way more alternate personality screen time than Grace did. Yeah. Yeah, he's right about that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Trisha, I've said this a couple of times. I wanted to ask her when I was at Dragon Con. I think I mentioned in a previous episode, in the character Bible at the beginning of the show, she got 4 words to describe her character, and she had never acted before. So for her to play all the different versions of Six throughout the show so differently and completely is extremely impressive. And yeah, to try to keep up with that for Grace Park might have been something she stumbled over. That's definitely a possibility.
I want to thank Grant, by the way, for tipping that $2 earlier. Appreciate you, Grant. It's like I said, folks. I know Grant was trying to super chat, but I'm technically not monetized yet. I still got 277 watch hours to cover. So if anybody wants to, blow through the playlist either of this podcast or through Rogue Resistance / United Resistance, by all means, go right ahead. I don't know if I really put together a playlist for United Resistance, but I'll have
You probably should, especially since the name change.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and put that together for you guys. But yeah, there's a lot of good episodes of United Resistance. We've had some great guests on and some great discussions on that show. And don't forget again, next Tuesday, you don't want to miss it. Adult entertainment superstar Allura Jensen is on with us, so that is going to be fun. She is but we're not going to talk about the usual stuff like her adult film career. We're actually going to talk about Patriot stuff because she is a Patriot. So that's why she's there. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure every male on our panel will be looking forward to that.
Plenty of research will be done.
Probably, dude. Yes.
My kids probably won't be watching that one.
Yeah. Grace was also angelical throughout the series, says Tony. If I recall, men's magazine, FHM or Maxim, had women of BSG, and I fell in love with Grace. Yeah. Dude, who didn't like Grace Park? I mean, that was everybody's like wannabe hot Asian wife. Everybody wanted her. I'm not gonna lie, she was hot as hell. Although I had a huge Katie Sackhoff crush, but I mean, you couldn't go wrong with any woman on that show.
I don't even know
if Katie or Grace, all three great.
Dude, the chick that played Duala,
Candace McClure.
Friggin' Candace McClure. Yeah, she's a smoke show. Friggin'
well,
God,
if you're into the older ladies, Rosalind did it just fine.
Even the bit part actresses, my God, Nikki Klein, she's gorgeous. Even more so when you see some of her more recent pictures and she's done up, man. Nikki's smoking. And so is the chick that played Racetrack, Leah Cairns. She's and
Crack Cat.
Cat. Oh man, Cat.
Even it's the other one. The one in the mutiny. I can't remember her name. The one that was a deck crew member. Celix.
Oh god, yeah, Felix was hot too.
And the commander of the Pegasus.
Hail TZ Burton. Talking about Ensign Rowe, Admiral Kane.
Yeah.
Michelle Forbes. Yeah, Michelle Forbes is just great. Michelle Forbes does real good at playing bitchy characters that are like very just bitches with power. It's the best way I could put it. She nails that role every time. I want to say hail to the lovely Sherry, by the way, because not because we're doing the whole like bitches with power thing, Sherry. It's not that. It's just I was saying hi to you. Just not trying to follow up. That's just a random follow in comments there.
I think you pretend much true.
Marby Dog says Linda Evans caused my early puberty. Oh god, dude, the chicks from Dynasty. Never forget the 80s. The cat fight between her and Joan Collins still to this day is worthy of watching.
And I mean, even in this episode, Kate Vernon is still really attractive.
Yeah.
Even as one of the older women of the show, still very attractive.
Yeah. She is. There was not really an ugly chick to be found on the show.
Yeah, the good old days when we didn't have to ugly down everybody on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You get a cast of 8 or 9 hot girls, all different bit parts and main parts, and didn't hurt the show at all.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody had blue hair.
Yeah. That too. Blue-eyed Recruiting based after Forbes did BSG. She played PR for an airline with the same demeanor and lost. Yeah, and Tony, it's funny because Script Doctor and I did a thing about that whole series, that Treadstone, and that's buried in my videos on this channel, guys. That's actually really good, and we covered Michelle Forbes' performance in that, which, by the way, if you haven't seen Treadstone, Michelle Forbes is damn good in that show too. It's like there's nothing that Michelle Forbes isn't good in. So
what's the premise of that show?
It's a prequel to the Bourne series.
Okay.
Yeah. Or a spin-off, whichever way you want to call it, but it has a lot of prequel-ish stuff in it. Maria with Tiantelli. Hey, great to see you, honey. Love you, Maria. Always appreciate the support. And Maria's in the house. Make sure you support her channel, by the way. Maria is amazing with some of the guests and the stuff that she does on her channel. It's awesome. Marby Dog said the Golden Girls had blue hair. Nice.
Fact.
Hail Keely Chow. Great to see you as well. So,
all right, let's bust through Act 4 so we can get our final thoughts in on this episode.
All right. Go right ahead.
Right. Back in present day, Anders tells of the first humanoid ever created, Cavil, who in turn helped build the remaining humanoid Cylons. He tells them that Ellen believed that the original Centurion's belief in God would stop the cycle of violence between the humans and the Cylons. But Cavil was spiteful and did not believe in God or mercy. He turned on the 5 and killed them by trapping them in a compartment and venting the oxygen. When the 5 downloaded, he boxed them, just as he did with the 3s much later on. Later, Cavil unboxed the 5, but implanted them with new memories, a sleeper-like setup not unlike how Sharon Valeri once was. He unboxed Saul Tigh first, then Ellen and the rest later. Anders mentions that they all saw the warning signs on Earth that were invisible to other people, But then his aphasia kicks in strongly. Specialist Ashay tells everyone to leave, and the surgeons are ready. Anders tells of number 7, one model they called Daniel. Anders screams to Salt Ty to stay with the fleet, that a miracle was about to happen. Colonel Ty returns to his quarters where Caprica 6 is resting. She tells Saul that the baby in her womb has begun to move. He later feels the baby move as well. Back in time, on the base ship, Ellen draws a picture of Saul as John returns, commenting on how she should update the picture to include the eye patch. John tells her that the Simon models have readied for Ellen's surgery, but Ellen asks John why, despite the many opportunities he's had to eradicate the 5, he has tortured them in various ways instead. She questions his ultimate reason for keeping the 5 alive, as Valeri, dressed in a Cylon flight suit, listens in. She concludes that John wanted the 5 to witness the evils of humanity before dying, so that when they were resurrected, they would admit they were wrong to have given John human traits. Ellen tells him that, while John claims to be a perfect machine, his petty hatred and jealousy had caused problems not only for the 7, but ended development of the Daniel models. John retorts that if he is in fact an imperfect creation, then it is because she made him so. Ellen tries to reconcile with, to apologize to, and to forgive John, but he rejects her outright and leaves. Back on Galactica, Tyrrell's team continue their work to repair the Battlestar as the Admiral looks on. Tyrrell tells him that he began to think about the damage to the Battlestar's superstructure that can't be seen. Using a device that reveals damage through spectral imaging, he shows the Admiral that the Battlestar's bones are rotten. When he suggests that they use a Psylocke technology that would grow into the metal, Adama strongly objects to the idea of using the technology being infused so closely into a ship he had prided himself on being resistant to Cylon infiltration. Anders is ready for surgery, unconscious, as Kara Thrace speaks some final words of encouragement. The Admiral returns to his quarters, takes a drink from the bottle, and rinses his face in a sink. When he looks up to the mirror, he discovers massive cracks in the bathroom wall, shocking him with the extent of Galactica's damage. Back on the base ship, Sharon comes to take Ellen to surgery. She looks down at the sketch of Saul Ty and asks her how she can deal with knowing that he may hate her for everything she's done. Ellen responds that maybe Saul doesn't, because love is like that sometimes. Sharon then asks her to put on a surgical gown, and when Ellen refuses, believing it to be a useless theatrical prop. As they make their way down a corridor, Ellen asks Valeri if she has thought through taking part in John's plans. Valeri responds that she has, and surprises Ellen by bringing her to a waiting raptor. Sharon then races the raptor out of the base ship, which launches pursuing raiders. Dodging their gunfire, the raptor jumps away. Caudle, back in sickbay, returns to hand Kara the bullet from Anders' head. Surprised that he hasn't awakened, Gerard and Caudle are setting up an EEG to see how Anders' brain functions are handling things. Later, as Kara speaks to the still unconscious Anders, Nurse Ashay tells her not to bother, that his brain activity is essentially 0. Admiral Adama phones Tyrrell after several drinks, telling him despondently to do whatever he has to do to save our girl. And the episode closes.
Yeah, I that quote stuck with me. He gets on the phone and says, "Chief, do whatever you have to do to save our girl." That was great.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was real interesting, the escape from Cavil's base star. Were they on a base star or were they on the colony?
It was a base star.
Okay.
Base star, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm super interested in the next episode, because there's there's a couple of things that are coming up that I want to say something about, but I won't. But yeah, it was very interesting that Boomer had that change of heart, but I think she's kind of had that whole time because the eights have always been like that.
Mhm. Yeah, they were the only dissenting, or the first, if not the only model to vote against their line, I believe, was the quote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like I was talking about earlier, so I guess the question is, was Boomer actually always against John, or was all of that exposition to try to get Boomer on one side or the other? When did she make that decision?
That's a good question, and I'm not actually sure. I'm trying to remember if there's any specific reason she gives as to making her decision, but I can't recall.
Oh, it's super weird because like Boomer herself, just Boomer herself, is very interesting because you know it's like when you're watching, wrestling, and you got that character that's kind of like that tweener, but then they go baby face for a while, they go heel for a while, they go baby face for a while, they go heel for a while, and that's like what it is, what it feels like, constantly with Boomer. The eights, other than her, are pretty consistent.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
with hers, yeah, she has a constant like, I'm switching sides today thing.
and I don't know if the overview left it out, but I'm 99% sure that this is the episode that they learn about the hub too, isn't it?
Yeah, he mentions the colony, which is the hub. It's mentioned in passing. I don't think that it's tactically revealed yet, but it is, plot wise revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought part of that last act was, I mean, what got Boomer to side with her was talking about the hub. So maybe I'm getting ahead, or I
No,
could have
you're
sworn it
good.
was in this episode
No, you're good.
because Ellen basically tells John, "What are you starting to contemplate your existence now, or something like that?" And he says, "No, our extinction."
Yeah, and there's gonna be more that's coming, obviously next week with next week's episode. So,
Yeah. So
you
so
know,
he brings it up twice. He reveals it after discussing the destruction of the resurrection hub, talks about the colony, and then he brings it up again where he says that that's where her equipment is to go rebuild resurrection.
Okay, so they
So,
did bring up the resurrection hub being blown up,
yeah.
or being destroyed at this point. Okay, because with the time jump thing again, it's
Yeah.
but yeah, there was something else that was missing in there. There was another major line that wasn't in the overview, but I'm trying to remember what it was, and I got sidetracked trying to figure out if that was spoilers or not. So if I think of it, I'll come back to it.
awesome. Well, yeah, as far as this episode goes, a lot of exposition in it, but I still give this a solid 8 in my book.
I'd put it at an 8 or 9. This is one of my favorite episodes just because so much starts to get revealed, and so much of all the planning and everything else that has gone into it, just kind of gets revealed to different characters, not necessarily just us, but the different characters especially.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the line I was thinking about, Anders is going back into the surgery, and you read part of the line, but then he said something about there's angels guiding us.
Okay. Yeah. Right, because he's trying to remember basically what Kara is.
Yeah, he's telling them not to leave the Galactica because things are starting to happen and angels are guiding them. So, fairly important line.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to be a little more critical on it. I know this is one of the more favorite episodes of the season, but just due to all the exposition, I give it a 7.5.
Okay.
And there's a pretty decent lack of action too, even though we just came off a huge, action arc. So
Yeah,
I
this was not the episode if you were like an action person.
Yeah, but I mean, Stockwell alone got it to a fairly high number just with that tirade.
Yep.
And really, when we were first watching it, if it comes out on a weekly basis, I mean, finding things out was amazing at the time because it was like, where are we going? We're looking for the revelations and all that kind of stuff. So
especially knowing, I think we knew at this point that the series was coming to a close. So it's like, where are the answers to all these questions we've had? And like, yeah, they had to get them out there. But
yeah, and they had to do it quick because of that writer's strike. Somebody in the chat mentioned it earlier.
It's Tony. Yeah, we bring that up a lot. That's
okay.
So unfortunate that happened. But
yeah,
and the rest of the episodes of the series more than make up for the action quota that is needed.
True.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, so much for the sub that I see. Welcome, Linda. Welcome aboard. So thank you so much. And yeah, we threw the link out there. This is the Stream Elements link. If you would like to support the channel via Stream Elements, you can use this handy dandy link right here, folks. Unfortunately, it is that way till I get my 277 watch hours, and then people can start super chatting. And I also, I think, have to still enable two-factor authentication, which is a pain, but I'm going to do that soon at some point. So those are the two last things I need for my monetization, and I'll be there. But the 277 watch hours is my biggest thing.
And then you have to hope that Mama Susan doesn't have you on her radar.
Well,
you got to start behaving.
I keep gaining subs, so I'm doing something right. And listen, I'll never stop telling the truth. And if worst comes to worst, if YouTube ever decides that I'm at cross purposes with their platform, I mean, I have no problem going to Odyssey. But until that day comes, we're super close to monetization, and I'm very happy about that. So thank you for your continued support, folks. And just remember, without a great chat and great subscribers like you guys, there is no us, period. There really isn't, because you are the heartbeat of every single content creator. And I know there's some content creators out there that they get in a comfort zone. Sometimes they take their audience for granted, but I'll never do that. I always appreciate that folks are here, whether it's one person, 12 people, or 120 people. I don't care. Each and every one of you is the backbone of this stream, and that's why it works so well. So thank you for not only supporting United Resistance, but Pegasus Actual as well. And Thursdays is the day when we do Pegasus Actual that we can kind of all escape together and get away from, kind of the depression and the idiocy of the real world. So that's what's great about doing Pegasus. And the fact that I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there that don't like Battlestar Galactica. So, the BSG fans really like this show, and I appreciate that. And,
the question comes as to which BSG they love or hate.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that and
there's
not many that don't like it. There's just a whole lot that we haven't gotten to even watch it yet.
And the OGs,
we know they'll like it.
The OGs that love 78 Galactica are going to get their chance, because hey, when we're done reviewing this show, true to our word, we are going to start with the old one, with the original series, with the 78 show, and that's going to be fun too. So I'm looking forward to that. But
is Bradis going to have to change his uniform for that one, or no?
No?
Hell no. Actually, There's a pretty good chance that someone is going to buy me a Viper Pilot jacket for that.
The OG one? The
Yeah,
old school? Nice.
I'm pretty sure that's actually going to happen. So whether I
All
want to
right.
or not.
Oh,
Maybe there will be a costume change.
Perhaps. All right. Tommy loves the 78 show. He says, Marby Dog said 78. I was 4. I was too, Marby. I was born in 74, same as you were.
I would have been -3 there.
I have
Yeah.
-7.
Yeah, you youngins, you young whippersnappers. All right. Well, thank you again, folks, for tuning in. I'm going to go around and let these guys hawk their channels. And then we are going to get on out of here. So we will start with our wonderful third member of the panel this evening, and that was Mr. Brahmabul. So, yeah, take it away, sir. Tell them about you.
Yeah, fairly new creator. My show is Brahma's Bullpen. I am putting together a few permanent panel members, and then we'll run some guests. Right now, I'm just kind of, mostly hanging out with Drew and Brightest Day. So I'm gonna be making the rounds and getting some people onto our show. It'll be fun. We'll talk politics. We'll talk some entertainment. Congrats, Drew, on 1,000 subscribers, and hail chat. You guys have been great. I know lots of you, and it's good to see all of you.
Yeah, we go over to Mr. Brightest Day.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Brahma. Guys, thank you for joining us again. I know it was a huge delay, but it's good to be back. Brightest Day on YouTube, Twitch, Odyssey, everywhere, basically. My secondary channel, Booked with Brightest Day Audiobooks, is where I'm dumping all of my sci-fi book readings. If you're a fan of audiobooks, check me out there. I've been changing up my content on the main channel, and I hope to just have a lot of fun from here on out. Love you guys.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that, buddy. And, listen, folks, I can't wait to see you guys Tuesday for United Resistance. It's going to be awesome having Laura Jensen in the house with us. She's going to be very, very an interesting guest. So I really can't wait for that, because I talked to her at length today when we were getting the her appearance set up, and man, does she just have a mind and just observe. She's observant in the best kind of way for political discourse, and I can't wait to talk to her and get her take on current events, because she is very plugged into what's going on. So Tuesday is going to be fun. Of course, we're going to promote the heck out of that. And those of you out there that interact with us quite a bit, when we do, please, if you can just retweet and share, get the word out about that show, because that's going to be a very, very good one. And of course, as far as 1,000 sub celebration, I'm still figuring out what day I want to do that. That may happen this weekend, and if it does not, it will definitely happen next weekend. But I will be doing 1,000 sub celebration stream here soon, whether it be this weekend or next weekend, but it's going to happen one of the two. So that's what I got to say about that. As always, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We love you guys, and we will see you back here next Thursday for another episode of Pegasus Actual Podcast. So, till then, so say we all.
So say we all.
So we all. Cheers.
That's right.